Welcome to Climify, the podcast that connects climate scientists and design educators together so that we can help combat our climate crisis in our classrooms. The discussions on this program are geared to help you climify your syllabi to assign projects that not only teach design fundamentals, but also can have a positive impact on our climate.
This episode is brought to you by Renourish. Renourish is your one-stop online resource for sustainable design and systems thinking strategies and tools for the graphic designer. You can learn more about Renourish on their website at re-nourish.org, or you can follow them on Twitter and Facebook at Renourish.
Hello, and welcome to still season 1 of Climify. It's our wrap-up episode where I'm joined today by one of the climate designers, founders, Marc O'Brien, who was also important in launching this podcast. We're going to talk today about our thoughts and what we learned about listening to season 1 of Climify and go deeper into our own thoughts and ideas and next steps, really, what could lead into not only season 2 of the podcast, but into other great collaborations with design educators, climate scientists, and beyond. We'll also talk a little bit about the successes of the season. I do think that there were many and that a lot of good things happened. So I'm excited to have Marc on today to talk about season 1, and let's get going. Welcome, Marc. Thanks for having a few minutes today to join me on the program and to share your thoughts about how the first season went. And I'm interested in hearing all your ideas about where we could take the show next, as well as how this could influence what you're doing over at climatedesigners.org.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Eric. Yeah, super excited about season 1, excited about all the guests that we had, and even the spin-off series that 2 of our team members, Rachel Cifarelli and Grace Turich, produced called Deep Dive, where they actually approached me and you saying, hey, we love what Climify is doing. We would love to unpack this through a young designer's perspective. And so they created this whole 5-part series called Deep Dive, where they, obviously from the name of the series, dove deep into most of your interviews. And so if you're listening now and you haven't checked out the Deep Dive series, you can still find it where you're finding the Climify episodes. Yeah, and I think over the last couple months with season 1 of Climify, we've been doing a lot of behind the scene updates with all things CD EDU. So we'll get into a lot of that as well on this call, on this show, I should say. And
this is a show now. This is not a Zoom call.
There you go. We're official. This is official.
Yeah. I have to say, though, that the Deep Dive outcome was one that I was, I think, most excited about, because it demonstrated that the podcast had merit. You had 2 listeners, 2 young designers who were inspired by the guests, were inspired by the topic, and they decided we're going to make a whole podcast about that. And as you know, podcasts are a lot of work. So I think what did you say, that in November they came to us, or of 2021, or was it December? Something like that. But that was like, gosh, it took them like months really to get all of this going. And I'm super happy that happened. I did not expect that to take place. So it blew me away a little bit. That was one of my favorite parts about doing this, was seeing something like that happen.
Yeah. And I think just to bring this up too, this brings up the spirit of climate designers. A lot of the programs that we offer, offerings, whatever you want to call them, a lot of them are actually created by our members. They approach us saying, hey, we love what you're doing. I want to contribute XYZ. What do you think? And through conversations and some idea generation, brainstorming, we come up with an offering. And that's what happened with Rachel and Grace. And it just shows the spirit of our members when it comes to them seeing a gap or seeing something that is missing in this larger conversation when it comes to design and climate change, And knowing that we are a growing movement of designers taking climate action, they're like, hey, this doesn't exist. Can we use the Climate Designers platform as a way to do that? And then, yeah, we give them the support, we give them the platform. And so it's just a perfect example of how we're all collaborating together to make climate designers a thing.
Yeah. And Rachel, Grace, if you're listening, please do more episodes. You were really both great at this. This is your first podcast from what I understand, but you did such a good job. So if you're listening, please do more. I had a good time listening to all 5 episodes. And then when you told us, oh, we're only doing 5, I was a little sad, I have to say. I was a little sad. I wanted more.
And who knows, maybe they'll spin off and do a completely different climate designer related podcast. Yeah, we're excited to keep working with them. So Eric, I want to call out an article recently that was the driver of this episode. You recently wrote on Medium highlighting season 1 of Climify. Yeah. And so we'll definitely put the link to that article in the show notes. But when I read it, I was like, yes, let's dive deeper into some of these takeaways. And you listed 8 takeaways in that piece. And so let's unpack them.
Okay. It took me a while to get to that point where I could write this stuff down because I ended the show in December, and then it's a lot of work. And so I just needed some headspace.
It's a lot. Yeah. Kudos to you for not only producing and hosting and editing, but also just synthesizing everything and putting it all together.
And we're going to make that known at the end of the program. We're going to have an opportunity for volunteer work here.
All right. So your first takeaway, you stated to learn more about the basics of climate change. Students want to do something about it, but need guidance.
Yeah, that was something not only that I've experienced as an educator, but I heard multiple times throughout the season. And the 8 takeaways, I didn't try to get 8. They were just there. They were woven into all the episodes. So I remember Catherine Poole talking about this. I think that was episode 4. And then, of course, Rachel Cifarelli talking about this more at length as when they were design students. And I heard it from Lisa Zimmerman. Students really want to do good, whether it be just good design or make a difference. And around climate, what I heard throughout the season is that not only educators, but definitely students just want to know more about what they can do, because it's overwhelming, the amount of bad news you hear, and eco anxiety is permeating throughout, I think, a lot of our students and educators and everyone else. And so I think they just want to know what they can do. And that's really an important takeaway from that first season.
Yeah, and I think the thing that we have to overcome is the feeling of being overwhelmed, so that people don't do anything, because when they're in this state of, I don't know where to start, I don't know what to do, they just freeze. And we want to avoid that. We need people to step up and to contribute in some form or another. And one of the things that we have done with Climate Designers EDU, which we call CDEDU, so we'll reference that throughout the show, is we created a starter kit full of resources to understand the basics of climate science, sustainability, and a lot more. It's just a simple Google Doc, nothing fancy, but you'll find it on climatedesigners.org/edu. And it's just, we purposely put just enough information in that doc to not overwhelm an instructor, an educator who is just learning all of this for the first time. So we have links to articles and videos and all the things necessary for that educator to just start to get a grasp of what all this means, both on the scientific level, sustainability level, and a lot of other levels. So definitely be sure to check out that resource. It's a simple Google Doc. We should probably make it prettier, fancier at some point.
But we're designers. We should do that.
We should. We have a lot of other stuff going on with climate designers, but yes, definitely you'll be able to find it. Yeah. Great. So I want to move on to the second one. This is something that really stood out for me. You stated, be authentic, share what worries you, admit you don't have all the answers, but inspire hope as as we indeed can do this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that also stood out to me too, because I think a lot of times as educators standing up in front of the classroom, we feel like we should know everything, right? Like we feel like some of us let our egos get away there, but that we do know everything, but we don't. And I think we should just admit it to the students, because some of them also think that we know everything too. And it's just not true. We don't have all of our shit together. Sorry. I would love to be in that position where I had all my shit together, but sometimes we're a little bit of a mess, and we need to let people know that. That came up in the Rachel Cifarelli episode, Catherine Poole episode, I think the Lisa Zimmerman episode from the season. Just be yourself. I think the first episode with Jasmine Sanders, this is something that she alluded to, and I totally agree with it. I have been in conversations with students, and I'm interested to hear why it stood out so much to you too, Mark, because in my own teaching experience, I'm having conversations about climate, and I'm listening to the students, and I'm not really sharing my feelings, just facts. And in retrospect, I think they want to hear how I feel. Am I scared too? Yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm not nodding my head listening to your response. And with this particular class, so I teach a climate designers class at California College of the Arts in San Francisco, and this is my, I think, 4th semester, and it's a tough class. It's a tough class, period. Cramming both design and climate into a semester. And so I'm still learning how to put all this together, and I'm tweaking every semester. I'm tweaking things and fine-tuning how I approach the topic or topics, and how I approach the project and all that stuff. But nonetheless, we do have these tough conversations at the start of every class. I try to bring up some sort of relevant current thing that's happening in the world that relates to climate change. And we do talk about a lot of we talk about fear, we talk about anxiety, we talk about the future, what that will no doubt look like. And we have these tough conversations with students, and I very much share with them how I feel. And if anything, it's a nice opportunity for me to be open and honest with other people, even if they are my students. Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of conversations that I have with people around this topic, you're right, Eric, when you said we tend to be looked at as the experts in the room, or the people that have it all together. And there's not so many opportunities where we can just let our guard down. And I make it very clear myself that I don't have all the answers, that I'm learning this stuff as we go. The way that I frame it is that humans have never, as long as humans existed, we've never experienced what we're experiencing and will no doubt experience ever. And so there is no guidebook. There's no business as usual. There's no best practices. This is all new for all of us. And I think the moment that we can just acknowledge that, as much as there's science and technology and solutions and approaches that already exist out there, which is amazing, we really do need to just acknowledge that this is going to be hard, and we're going to run into road bumps and dead ends, and we're going to fail, and but we should step up and learn from those failures and keep going. And I'm going to bring up 2 more things. There's a tweet from, I follow this woman, she's in the education space on Twitter, and I'll put the link to this actual tweet because there's a graphic to it. Her name is, I hope I pronounce it right, Ana Lorena Fabriga. And she has a tweet in there with a graphic. So the tweet itself says, the average teacher provides ready-made knowledge. A good teacher introduces new ideas. A great one introduces new ways of thinking and problem solving. And in that graphic, she shows the teacher that is signified with a blue dot kind of on the top of the students. And it's, here's what you need to know. And then all the students below them in a traditional classroom setting. And then there's another graphic below that has the teacher in the center, and all the yellow dots are around the teacher. And the teacher says, there's a little speech bubble that says, let's figure this out together. And you have all these little arrows going back and forth between students, between the teacher. And I show that tweet at the start of this semester. And I tell my students, like, look, I don't have the answers. Let's figure this out as we go. If you ask me a question and I say, I don't know, let's research it. Let's figure it out together.
I like
And
that.
I think another, yeah. And going back to climate anxiety and feeling hopeless and just having these hard conversations, that is one of the reasons why the semester long project that we do, it's more on the optimistic, hopeful side of things. And
Good.
so the project that I introduced, and I've been doing this project for the last, I believe, 3 semesters. Again, I'm tweaking things, I'm changing things around. But the how might we statement basically is how might we support existing climate solutions to become widespread and adopted?
Hmm.
Being in the climate space as a professional designer for 6 or so years now, with my clients and the work that I've seen, there's a lot of great approaches and solutions that's addressing all things climate change, right? And so instead of having a design project focused on stop doing this, stop doing that, or this is the state of the world that's going to happen if we don't do it, like all this negative stuff, I want to focus young designers' energy and talents towards positive and hopeful solutions and approaches. So what we do is we do the research on who's doing what out there. We use Project Drawdown as a foundation, and we want to highlight what's currently going on so that if more people know that these things are happening, organizations and companies and whoever is making all these solutions and approaches happen, then that'll hopefully get more people involved, get more people to want to help those that are doing that kind of work. So I'm trying to address the anxiety, the fear through the project challenge itself, so that at the end of every semester, not only do they have a great project in their portfolio, but I hope that they have a better perspective when it comes to our climate breakdown.
Yeah, it makes sense because you said you don't have a lot of time in the class. You don't have basically teaching climate, teaching about design are 2 different degrees for 4 years. So you're trying to amplify existing solutions is what it sounds like. And as opposed to them trying to reinvent the wheel and learn all this stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes a lot of sense to me. I like that. I'll steal it.
No, and I at some point I will put some of the previous projects on the website. For those listening, definitely stay tuned. So moving on to the third takeaway, Eric, and we can probably go a lot deeper into all these. Each of these takeaways probably could be a whole episode, but
they might be in the future. We don't know.
They might, yeah. So the third takeaway: advocate for sustainability and climate to be a foundational element in your design curriculum. I thought this was a really great takeaway that you got, and I got a lot of that listening to some of your episodes as well. So, yeah, let's dive deeper into that.
Yeah. I think you and I have talked about this offline many times, just that it started for me like back when I first started teaching and I was trying to bring climate and sustainability into the curriculum, and the powers that be were telling me like, if you do it, it has to be an elective. And I thought, okay, better than nothing. But the students had a choice. They could take this class, sustainability, or they could take all these other fun classes on pop culture and animation. And why are they going to choose mine over all of this? And it didn't seem right. It didn't seem right that something so important to our own existence was an elective. And I heard this from other people, not just in this season, but it seemed to also resonate throughout the season that the earth is our home. Provides for us. If it can't provide for us anymore, then we won't be here. That sounds like a foundational thing. This isn't like an elective you might take. It's you need to learn about the basics of our planet and how it works as much as you need to learn how composition and color theory works to be an effective designer, because we see the implications now of overconsumption, planned obsolescence through design, and we're getting into worse trouble. So that's what I think about it and why I think it was a big takeaway.
Yeah, especially when you're mostly teaching young designers who still haven't formed their habits yet. So like when you're learning composition, typography, color, they're they're a sponge, right? They're just like absorbing all this stuff because they don't know any better. So what better time than that point to incorporate this stuff in there as well, but
Exactly.
not as a separate class, but have it integrated into all of their foundational classes,
Exactly. Yeah.
as opposed to having them go to a traditional 4-year college, learn the basics of design, the foundations of design, and then have to go into the workforce where they then go, oh man, maybe I should learn more about the sustainability stuff
Right.
when it's already years past. And it's a lot harder for them to learn some of this newer stuff when they've been building out their own foundational learning from school and maybe from their first or second job. And one of the things that I want to use this as an opportunity to bring up, one of the things that we've been working on over the last few months, bringing up Rachel Cefarelli again, is something called New Wave. And so New Wave is her baby. Again, another initiative from one of our members that approached me saying, hey, Mark, I have this thing. I think she might have shared it in one of our virtual events. And I reached out to her and she was like, hey, could I use climate designers as a way? Or maybe I even asked her, I don't know. It's all these project origin stories get muddied after a while, but nonetheless, it was another initiative from a member of ours, and we used our resources and our know-how to really dive deeper and help her bring this project to life and to make it into a bigger thing. So if you haven't checked out New Wave, definitely check out New Wave. It's if you go to climatedesigners.org/edu, you'll see a link to New Wave, which is the first ever initiative that centers students' experiences at the intersection of climate change and design education. And she's been interviewing, I believe, 20 plus students over the last couple of months from lots of different schools, different majors. And she put all this into this first ever report. And I'm super excited about it. I've been working with her on developing that report. She's been an amazing collaborator. She's very passionate about this kind of work where she wants to bring this conversation into classrooms as well. And this New Wave is her attempt to do that. And the PDF is full of testimonials, it's full of data from Rachel's research and a whole lot more. So if you're an educator and want to learn how you can bring this content into the classroom, and more importantly, what students are saying and what they're wanting out of their departments, out of their educators.
Yeah, I think it's academic, right? She's doing that, but I think it's a little bit of a punk rock thing too, which you could appreciate, is that if the teachers aren't teaching it, we're just going to do it. We're going to bring it into the classroom ourselves. This is the voice. Another one of the voices that I hear in that report is like, hey, educators, we want to work with you. And if you don't, we're going to do it anyways. That's what it kind of sounds like to me.
Yeah, exactly. She definitely fits the DIY ethos. Just do it herself. And I believe now it's coming to me. She started it as a project in her thesis class. And she then shared it with our community. That's right. And then I reached out to her and said, hey, would you want to do this at a larger scale? And so it's all coming back to me now. Sorry, Rachel, if I flubbed the intro to that.
This is why Rachel needs to do another podcast, because then she can go deeper into this even further.
Actually, speaking of, I'm now that the PDF is okay. This is breaking news. First time I'm sharing this, but now that the PDF is live, Rachel and I have been working together on creating an offering where she goes and gives a more detailed presentation to faculty and design departments. So we've been working on how to put that together. It's not just a repeat of the PDF. It's her diving deeper into the content of the PDF, as well as how to actually do this, which ties into a lot of the stuff that you and I have been doing when it comes to developing projects and resources and things like that. I'm not sure when this will be released, but stay tuned for that. So no doubt you'll be able to have Rachel come in and speak to your fellow faculty members and departments. Yeah. So I'm trying to make Rachel New Wave famous. I want her to speak at design education conferences. I'm trying to get her to really own this. Yeah. She's really loving this project. Yeah. So moving on to takeaway number 4, create design ethics courses and make them mandatory. And I love how you have an exclamation point at the end of that takeaway.
I usually don't do that, but I heard Rachel and Grace talk about this on their mini series, as well as Rachel discuss it in her episode. Lisa Zimmerman and a few others were talking about ethics quite a lot. And what are the ethics of a designer? Yeah, I've been to a number of different virtual and in-person events over the past 3 years where the concept of a design ethics course was talked about in these panels and all of that. And I just think you can't not talk about that these days. There's so many things outside of climate that ethics are impacting in our lives, from what out in the world happening on a daily basis to what you experience as a professional. So I think it should be mandatory. I'm not alone in that. I know.
Totally. I totally agree. And the way that I view it, the way that we talk about it with climate designers, that designers create culture. Designers have an amazing amount of responsibility. When you hit the publish button, the print button, the whatever button, right? Like when you put your work out there in the world, it has impact. And it's really a matter of you figuring out what that impact looks like. Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it, and of course it's not there's a spectrum to that. But no, I totally agree. I think we need to, especially in design education, really start to have these conversations at that level before those design students enter the profession. And I'm wondering if there are any schools out there that already have something like this. I don't know if you know of any, Eric.
Mine does. University of Illinois. We have a required ethics class called EDGE, which is, it's an acronym for Ethics of a Designer in a Global Economy. That's what the university wanted the name to be, but I know, like, if you see that I'm taking that class, it's a mouthful, so we just shortened it to EDGE. And that was the class I referenced earlier in the show where I said I want to teach these topics, and they made it an elective. So I'm like, how could ethics be an elective as an optional thing? When some new faculty came to my university in my program, we talked about that and made it an official thing where it is required. And so all students in their junior year take that class. I think that's a big win.
You're making me think. I'm wondering if this is a good time for all of us, and I'm talking to you design chairs, if this is a moment where we reevaluate our electives. Like, what should we keep as an elective and what elective should be actually mandatory, what should be actually in the core curriculum. But yeah. But I'm interested in, and I'm going to put this out to the audience. If you're a design educator and have something like this in your school or your department, let us know. We would love to talk to you. We would love to learn more about what you cover. This is a bigger conversation, obviously, and we don't have time to go into it, but it would be great to just see what's out there. And how can one school, one department teaching a design ethics class support another school that wants to do that? Right. How could we learn from your program, EDGE, Eric, from the SCCA? Like, how do we share some of that curriculum so that we can put this into as many design departments as possible?
Yeah, because sometimes these if you want to create a new course, it could take a year, and you got to get all this paperwork signed off of, and that's tough. But if you have something to work from, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, exactly. Which maybe is a good segue into the next takeaway. So the next takeaway, you wrote, assign real world projects that inspire and can have an impact where you are. So this one really stood out. And I'm biased, of course, because of the work that you and I have been doing behind the scenes over the last few months, which we finally launched. But before we get into that, maybe you can share a little bit about how you got to that takeaway.
I've heard it before doing this show, but this happened with, I think, again, the conversations with Rachel, Roz, Godelnik. Throughout the season, it came up with even Akila Stewart and such, that students, they respond to seeing their things out there in the world. I think it's one of the reasons why creatives get excited to share what they can make with people. It doesn't really mean as much, I think, to us if we make something and then put it in a drawer. We wanted people to see it. We feel good about it. And so there's something about seeing as well, like something positive happened from a project you did in school. I've had that experience teaching, not so much as a design student. I don't think I've ever really had that experience, unfortunately, but as a design educator, I definitely have seen the difference when in the students when they saw their work out there. Like it meant so much more to them. And even they came back years later after they graduated and they're like, I always remember that project. That was so cool. They don't have it in their portfolio anymore. Sadly, they moved on from that. They're have a lot more visually interesting work as a professional, but it was a big, impactful moment. And that's what I heard Rachel say. I've heard Rachel and Grace talk about it too in their mini-series.
Yeah, you're making me think. I took a class when I was a design student at Virginia Commonwealth University. I took a class called Design Center for 3 semesters, and it was a studio-based class where we worked on real projects in the Richmond, Virginia area, mostly
That's
nonprofits.
Cool.
Yeah, it was amazing. Shout out to John Malinowski, if you're listening, great teacher, mentor of mine. And that class really planted the seed in me, showing me that design can have a positive impact. And now teaching at California College of the Arts part-time as an adjunct, we have in the graphic design department, we have a class called TBD, which is taught by my friend Eric Hyman, another shout out, and very similar, where the students work on real projects in some sort of social impact space. And man, wouldn't it be amazing if more design schools had classes like that, or if maybe all of their classes had that kind of angle, real world project in some form or another. It can get complicated, clients or community partners and things like that. So of course we want to acknowledge that it can be a bit of a heavier load, but could there be tweaks to existing design classes and projects that can incorporate more real world components to it? And so this is maybe a good opportunity, Eric, to announce our updated CD EDU project briefs that you and I have been jamming on for the last few months. Yeah.
More than a few months. I felt like this has been like a year and a half.
We started a V1. This is a V2. So yeah, the V1 was Eric and I with a few other faculty, fellow design educators, we put together a list of complete projects ready to go. It had everything in there. And again, simple Google Docs. And what we found is that we did some research and interviews over summer of 2021, I believe.
It seems like forever ago, though. I can't even tell you that.
What is time, right?
Yeah.
What is time? And what we found is when we interviewed our fellow design educator peers, we found that they appreciated the complete projects, but they didn't have the bandwidth to just throw out their existing projects and take on a complete new project. So what we did was this V2 version of what we're offering on the website now are these really simple project briefs broken up by topic or discipline. So if you are teaching, for example, a typography class, then we have something for you. So if you go to the website now, we have really simple ideas to start to incorporate climate science and climate change into your typography lesson. So you don't have to completely overhaul your whole semester project or any project for that matter. You can just add a little bit of climate flavor into an existing project. We do the same thing with disciplines. By topics too. So if you're an instructor who's really interested in solar or regenerative agriculture, again, so if you go to climatedesigners.org/edu, you'll click on the project briefs button, and then you'll get there. And we started out with 3 each, 3 on the topics and 3 on discipline. Very similar format for each of these project pages. We have a few project ideas. We have a list of articles and resources. We're featuring student projects mostly from Behance, which is a great resource. If you're not using Behance, we highly encourage you to use Behance as inspiration. And then we have a few other things on each page too. So this is our attempt to give you all a little encouragement to tweak your projects if you're not quite ready to bring on full, complete climate-focused design projects. And so we're starting with these 6. If you have any ideas for new other topics, other disciplines, please let us know. We're all ears. And one other thing on this page too, on the bottom of the page, we do, and Eric, you can go into this a bit more. We have assignments that were given by the guests of Climify. So one of the things I love about the Climify podcast is that at the end of each episode, Eric asks the guests, if you were in front of a classroom full of designers, what would your design project be? And I love hearing their responses. And Eric has typed up some of their responses, and now we're offering those assignments, basically those project ideas as well.
Yeah, those are really cool. And I keep on forgetting about that they exist because I'm planning my courses for the fall. And oh yeah, wait, there's some ready to go. I don't need to do much planning. They already did it for me. And they're really interesting because they come from some of them are not designers. A lot of them aren't designers. And so hearing their ideas for design were, I don't know, revolutionary in some respects that I would never have thought to have done that. So that's why I like those so much.
Yeah, and you said the magic word fall, right? So like we know that spring semester is about wrapping up. We are recording this mid-April, so we just have a few weeks of spring semester left, and we have the summer to not only enjoy and take some time off, but to, not me, I have to teach in the summer, but
get outdoors at least, right?
Yeah, to get outdoors, unpack the spring semester, and then at some point plan your fall semester. So we really hope that you all head to the new project page and just use it as inspiration. Feel free to use those complete design projects or the Climate assignments, and let us know. Please let us know if there's anything that we should change, update, add. If you want to contribute, please let us know. We're really wanting to provide a database really for these projects so that we can get this into classrooms as fast as possible.
Yeah, agreed.
So moving on to takeaway number 6, every system needs to change. Use systems thinking in your classroom to better visualize the problem, the big picture and the detail, so that you can locate leverage points for interventions to create solutions. So I know, Eric, you're all about systems thinking. So it was great to see. It was great to see that in here.
I was a little wordy on that one, but yeah, this was coming from the episode We Need to Break the Wheel. It was with Ruth and Alden. And when they talked about that, like every system that we have needs to be rethought. And as someone who spends a lot of my time in the world of systems thinking and trying to figure out how to design using that, one of the big takeaways from systems thinkers is that you and I, Mark, the listeners, we're not to be blamed for the things that go wrong. It's the system that's messed up, and it's causing these things to happen. And so thinking in that way, we can find opportunities, like I said, for intervention to, as designers, as creatives, to help solve some of these wicked problems, really, like our climate crisis. So it wasn't just Ruth and Alden that talked about this. Roz Godelnik did, Akila Stewart did. They didn't use those same words, well, kind of, right? They were talking about, man, things are messed up for a lot of different people. And if you're a person of color, a person in different communities, you're going to be more affected by our climate crisis than maybe those in the middle class. So we need to have their voices heard. We need to have them help co-create solutions. And so what better way to do that is to look at that whole system and where does it need to be fixed? Where does it need to be completely redone? And I don't know how to do all that. I don't know. I just don't know.
Yeah, I think you start with just understanding what systems thinking is and how, as a designer, you implement that in your work.
Yeah.
And one of the things, I'm going to put Eric on the spot as I unpack this takeaway.
Hey, this is my show. You can't do that.
I reached out to Eric and Michelle Feller, who's a colleague of ours, and Michelle and Eric have been working on a lot of stuff as well together. And they have been putting together this amazing offering centering around systems thinking, where they talk about the topic and they go much more into it, and they put together this amazing presentation and this workshop. And I invited Michelle. Eric couldn't make it, but I invited Michelle into my climate designers class this semester, and she did a great workshop on casual loops, which is is it what would you call it, Eric? Like a tool or a,
Yeah, I would say
you
so.
know,
It's definitely a
yeah,
tool.
yeah, a tool within the systems thinking toolkit. And so the students were able to apply where they were currently on the project to that workshop, and I loved it. And so if you're out there and you're wanting, I'm gonna promote Eric and Michelle. If you're wanting this kind of work to be brought into your classroom, I highly recommend reaching out to Eric and Michelle to bring this into your school or your classroom. They put together an amazing Notion page and workshop. I don't know if you have any other workshops that also touch
We're,
upon
we're
systems thinking.
working we're working on those. Like we wanted to start with the basic couple and then build out to see how they went. We're guessing they're going to go well. So it's good to hear that they did. Maybe we can do some of the other ones we're thinking about too.
Yeah, yeah, great. Well, maybe yeah, just reach out to Eric if you're interested in bringing this into your classroom. And as we wrap up, I'm going to combine takeaways 7 and 8.
Sure.
So you have invite climate scientists in your classroom, as well as invite those already affected by climate change to your classroom. And I thought this was really a really great point too, separate from just the climate scientists, but also people who have been affected by it. Like, what a powerful opportunity for students and educators to hear from people that have been affected by it, whether it's through a flood, a storm, any sort of, yeah, it's important to hear those stories to put a face to the news, right? I feel like a lot of this stuff, we were only talking about statistics and data. We're not really doing a great job of, at least in mainstream media, bringing up who is actually being affected by it. But whether it's those affected by it or climate scientists, I think it's really important to just reach out to people, especially climate scientists, right? They're wanting to share what's going on to as many people who would be willing to listen. And
Yeah.
so I'm wondering, Eric, if you can maybe go into ways to find these people, how to approach them, how do we bring these people into our classroom?
Yeah. With the climate scientist part, if you're at a fairly big university, maybe not in your case, because it's more of an art school, Mark, at least if you're at a university with there's physics department, you can just look on the website and see who's doing what and just reach out. That's what I did. And that may become the inspiration for this show. Really, let's just ask the climate scientists what we should be doing and or the experts. There's a lot that were on the show, listening to their episodes in your classroom. If you can't get one, I know people who just play one of our Climify episodes to their students or have them listen to it outside of class asynchronously and talk about it later on. But definitely they're on Twitter. You can DM them on Twitter. And that's what I've been doing, is just hustling, trying to find them. In terms of the other one, those affected by climate change, it may not be as hard as you think, because two of our guests, Jasmine Sanders and Catherine Poole, both had spent some time in Louisiana and were affected by hurricanes and tropical storms, flooding. Even if you were impacted by a terrible storm in the Midwest, you were affected by what's going on in the world of climate. And so it may not be as hard as we think to locate people affected, unfortunately. But if you're trying to do a little bit more due diligence and get folks from other countries, and I know Jasmine Sanders mentioned, and I think even Akila Stewart did, people who are working in unsafe working conditions in like Bangladesh, that's going to be a little bit harder, I would say. So I think it's a matter of like network, who in your network, putting a call out on a social media tool that you use, and have people like tell their story about how they were affected. I think it's super powerful, because just think about what we've been going through in the pandemic, right? Some people unfortunately misinformed about the virus, and then it affects them, and then all of a sudden they're evangelists to get the vaccine or be more careful, right? I see that this is the case for a lot of the people affected by climate change. Like, they take it seriously, but then it happens to them and they really become part of the movement. So they're powerful voices, I would say.
Love it. Love it. More perspective, more voices in this conversation. Yeah, Eric, I'm really appreciative of you writing that Medium post and us being able to dive deeper into your takeaways. And as we wrap up this episode, but also wrapping up season 1, what does season 2 look like?
Season 2, I started to think about more holistically, I think, because of the guests from season 1. You can't divorce race from climate, right? You can't divorce any issue from climate, because climate is going to impact all of our wicked problems with even more severity. So that has really been a guiding principle for season 2, and it's all from the guests. The guests have informed the next path. So I've been trying to find people for season 2 that, yes, are in the climate sphere, but also ones that are maybe tangentially connected to it, or ones that are working in areas that can be influencers to people working in climate issues of race and ethnicity, indigenous rights, other kind of social justice topics. So I'm broadening my search. They're not just climate experts.
Great, great. And if someone is that person or knows someone who could be a guest, how do they get in touch with you?
I think the best way, you can go right to our Instagram page, the Climify podcast page. My email, you're welcome to email me. It's ebenson@illinois.edu. Yeah, those are the two best ways to get in touch.
Great, great. And as we get into season 2, I know that a lot of this was a labor of love on your end, but it seems as if we might need some extra help with some of this.
God.
And with climate designers, it's been more or less an all volunteer
It has been.
initiative. And so this is a labor of love for everyone involved. But Eric, it seems as if you might need some extra help for season 2, huh?
Yeah, I think it would be nice scenario. We're looking for what we would call a podcast manager for season 2, one that works with quality control, content accuracy, help with press releases, communicating from social media perspectives, and helping with some of the production schedules. Locating guests even would be a great help.
Awesome. Great. And so if that's you who's listening, definitely reach out to Eric. We would love to have you on not only the CDEDU team, but on the larger climate designers team in general. We're a bunch of lovely people. We meet up once a week on Fridays. And yeah, it's been great to see so many amazing people, step up and push this whole initiative and grow this whole initiative. So Eric, great chatting with you.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the program. And it was a good idea of yours to do this kind of wrap up episode. We're looking at summer 2022 for season 2. And until then, have a great rest of the semester, and we'll join up when it's a little bit warmer.
All right. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks for listening to Climify. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. To catch all the latest on Climify, you can follow us on Instagram at Climify Podcast. Climify is part of Climate Designers. Learn more at climatedesigners.org/edu.